antakaale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaprayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah.
At the time of death, whoever leaves the body and proceeds remembering me alone attains my being. There is no doubt about it. So here he's expanding on, from now onwards, he's expanding on this concept of as you think, so you become. The moment you think a thought, whatever it be, vicious or divine, that moment you've already changed. And a series of thoughts in that direction change you completely. Right now you have the choice, and this choice all of us have. You think a vicious thought, a cruel thought, a hateful thought. Right now, you don't have to wait for the future. That this same moment, you have injured your own mind. You've destroyed your own self. And a series of thoughts like this, and you become a totally vicious, cruel person. By the same token, this moment you have the choice of thinking a pure thought, an unselfish thought, a divine thought. And right now you've changed for the better. And a series of thoughts like this completely changes you. That is why throughout the Gita he keeps saying, you could be the most sinful of sinners. It doesn't matter. As long as you have shifted your thinking to the positive. Once you change your thinking, and you see the thing is that when you change your thinking, nothing about you changes. The externals don't change so fast. It takes time for the externals to change. So the people around you will say, hey, nothing has happened. You're still the same. You're still the same foolish person, same selfish person. So when people criticize you and say, oh, you're studying the Gita and you're living something else, don't get discouraged by it. Understand that it's your thoughts that you've got to be worried about. Change your thinking and keep thinking positively. Keep thinking of the divine. Keep thinking of the higher. And sooner or later, that moment you've already changed. You feel better. I don't know whether you've noticed, there's some days when you wake up and some negative thought creeps in and your whole day goes badly. And on other days, you wake up and you make that effort to entertain a positive thought. And my God, the day goes on brilliantly, smoothly. So it all depends on your thoughts. What is it that you're making an effort to think? There was this man who was totally worldly, and all that he was interested in is money and stock market and this, that and the other, and eventually he got a terminal disease. So as he was going down, his wife decided, she read this 8th chapter and said, let him think of God and maybe some hope there is, he'll go to God. So as it happened, she had hired a ward boy to look after him. And that ward boy's name was Vitthal. So she was very thrilled because all the time he would keep calling out to him, Vitthala, Vitthala, Vitthala. And she thought, oh great. Verse 5 of chapter 8 says, whatever you think of at the end, you'll go there. So she thought, right at the end, he'll call out to Vitthala, the ward boy, and maybe he'll go to Vitthal, God. But she hadn't bargained for a husband. Right at the end, and he was in pain, I don't know what he wanted. And this ward boy was not coming. So he said, hey, Vedya, come here. That was it. That was the end. But what it means is, when he says remembering me at the time of death is not the last thought, it is the resultant of all your thoughts. So if you have led a selfish, materialistic life all through, and suddenly decide to think of God at the end, first of all, it's not possible because the thought of God will not come to a materialistic person. Even at the time of death, he'll be thinking of only stock market and other things, material things. Secondly, it's the resultant of all your thoughts that takes you to the next. So what he's saying is, at the time of death, see, there are two aspects of me. There are two aspects in us. There is this material aspect and the spiritual aspect. Why we get stuck with the material is because it is obvious, it stares you in the face. You don't need great intelligence to understand what's happening. So you see it, you see the material things, and you get carried away by material things. It requires a person of wisdom to x-ray through the material things and see what is beyond, because appearances are deceptive. You must have found in your own experience, the best of people, the most pure-hearted people externally are very rough. The people who have absolutely no malice, no negativity, on the outside they are constantly shouting. But if you notice, nobody takes notice of their shouting. Everyone laughs when they shout. And yet there are others who are very even-toned in their speech, very mild, very, diplomatic in the way they deal with people, and yet they don't touch hearts like the way this rough person touches hearts. So appearances are deceptive. So even when this rough person, see, a person with a pure heart, even if he is abusive, he doesn't have that sting. Whereas the smooth-tongued people, even when they're speaking normal things, there is that sting in their words, in the speech. So therefore, you need this wisdom. Forget about, we're not even talking about Brahman. Even to get on in life, you need to be able to look beyond the obvious. Only then will you have some sense of wisdom, some sense of direction in life. But here he's speaking of Brahman. Now, why is it that we're not able to think of that which is beyond, the spirit? Because the spirit is something that cannot be contacted with any of the sense objects, sense organs. You can't see, hear, smell, taste, touch. You can't feel the spirit. You can't even conceive of the spirit with your intellect. So it's a totally vague concept. How will you think of something that you can't contact? That's the problem. And yet, if you gain this perception slowly, it comes slowly, and then Atman, which is a vague notion right now, becomes the only reality to a spiritual person. So, when you think constantly of the spirit, think constantly of that which is beyond material things. That's where you'll get after death. Now here when he says, whoever leaves the body and proceeds remembering me alone, means he's not just leaving the body, he's leaving the mind and intellect also. He's reaching the state of realization. So now what we need to understand is, just as the individual reaps what he sows, so also in the collective sense, a nation also, what kind of thinking are we cultivating among our society members, among our people, is what matters, is the direction that the nation will take. And that is why in this country alone, so much effort was made to cultivate sattva. In the caste system, which was totally destroyed later on, in recent years, the original caste system was built based on the highest tenets of wisdom, which is the Brahmana was at the top of the pyramid. Brahmana means a highly sattvic individual. So India was led, this country was led not by men of wealth, but by men of values, of purity. And this is important. Today, there is a dire need to revitalize ourselves with this concept of sattva. Remember this, for generations together, for centuries together, our forefathers cultivated this. It could not have been lost completely. It's there, it's dormant. All you need to do is kindle it. It's like the, what do you call that, gas stove, a pilot. You know, in the old days, they had what is known as a pilot flame. And the moment you turn down the gas, it worked without your having to light it. So similarly, it's there. The spark is there. The sattvic spark is there. The divinity is there in us. All we need to do is revitalize ourselves with it. Reinforce our personalities with this wonderful concept of sattva. And the rest we already have. As is being reported over and over again, the Western world particularly is afraid now. Afraid because they know that Indians have this capacity to excel in the face of challenges. Whereas there, the system is so smooth that they don't need to make an extra effort to excel. This is what has worked in our favor. And spiritually speaking, what has worked in our favor is exactly this. That the greater the challenges that come to you from the world, the more it drives you inward to tap into this infinite source of energy and vitality and happiness that lies dormant in us. And so, all that we need to do is fix a goal beyond the world. Align your thoughts with the goal. And don't worry about the result. Because the result will automatically come to you. All you have to do is make sure that your thoughts are totally aligned towards the goal of self-realization. Now, when we say self-realization, many of you may not be able to relate with that, but every one of us needs to fix a higher goal. Something beyond our selfish, self-centered interests to motivate us, to give us that sense of exhilaration and excitement in life. Now, today and the next 5 days, before we end for the day, we'll take a brief recap of all the ideas, the main points that we discussed during the day, because otherwise what happens is this knowledge is so volatile. By the time you leave the hall, if someone were to ask you, where did you go, what did you do? So, which chapter also you'll forget. So, let's take a look at what are the points that you take home with you today. Number one, that every one of us has the devil in us, but every one of us has something divine. And from today onwards, for the rest of our lives, we need to embark on a program of tapping into the divine and eradicating the devilish tendencies in us. How do we do that? The principle is, as you think, so you become. So what needs to be done is, remember the Nobel Prize for Medicine. Not gene silencing, but guna silencing. Which gunas in you need to be silenced? Tamasic and rajasic. Sloth and greed needs to be silenced. And what needs to be promoted? Sattvic. Then comes, what comes in the way of this process is instant pleasure. So stay away from all that gives instant pleasure and opt for deferred gratification. Remember, the pain is temporary, the benefits are permanent. And how do you keep opting for deferred gratification? Follow your intellect. It's the intellect that guides you properly in life. The mind leads you astray. The mind takes you for a ride. And that's why in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, he keeps saying, it's the desires of the mind are your greatest enemy. So this enemy within you, hold it under control. And the last thing we discussed was excellence. What are the ingredients for excellence? Sincerity of action, purity of heart, clarity of thought. Excellent. You make for the best students. Now, in the Bhagavad Purana, it is said that a person just happened to pass by, and by chance he heard a spiritual talk. He entered the hall. It's like somebody passing by on the road here and comes to know that this is what is happening. He comes here. In spite of the fact that he is not renounced, in spite of the fact that he is still attached to the world, he is very materialistic, one thought enters his mind. One spiritual thought enters his mind. And that one spiritual thought is capable of changing his entire personality. When Rabindranath Tagore's father, Debindranath Tagore, apparently was sitting in his estate one day, it was windy, and a piece of paper came flying through and landed at his feet. So he picked up the paper and read it. You know what it was? The first mantra of the Ishavasya Upanishad. When he read it, he says, that one mantra, that one piece of paper, scrap material that flew down to his feet, changed his life. Now, why I'm saying all this is that you have an opportunity between today and tomorrow evening to change the life of a few people around you. And how can you do that? Go home, and if each one of us tells at least 5 people, just the fact that these lectures are going on for the next 5 days, maybe you will have done a fantastically good karma by introducing, no jokes, introducing this fabulous knowledge to your friends, relatives, even enemies. So thank you.